Another dominant performance by Purdue, at least for the first 30-ish minutes or so of this basketball game against Washington. They end up final score beating Washington 81-73. Furious comeback from Washington, scoring 31 points in the last 10 minutes of the game. Uh, in large part, this game was up to 25-point lead for Purdue for at points in the even in the second half, and it was a little bit of an odd collapse. We've kind of seen two kind of sloppy finishes to games now with Wisconsin happening this last game before Washington, but nonetheless, Purdue moves to 4-0 in the Big Ten. So certainly a good start for Purdue. What did you kind of take away from this game in general, Ethan?
I remember as I was watching this game last night, in the moment, even as Purdue was building, a 45-28 halftime lead, it felt kind of sloppy. And we'll talk about what happened the last 8 minutes or so to make this a closer game than maybe it would have indicated otherwise. But even before that, Purdue scored 45 first half points. They were shooting something like 68% or 69% in that range in the first half and only scored 45, and only scored 45 and a half might sound a little silly, but when you're shooting that well, you should probably have more, even as few possessions as Purdue plays, as slow as they play. Just turnovers were a consistent problem throughout this game, even before the final stretch where it felt like the physicality got a little out of hand, and Purdue really felt like we've already won this game. Let's just run the clock out. Even before that, there was just some sloppy passes from Braden, missing TKR in a roll before, just firing a pass way too quick before TKR even got out of his screen. Trey was just a little slack with the ball at times when you get double teamed. He'd traveled, got his pocket picked a couple times. There were just a little bit of sloppiness throughout the game. And even with that, Purdue built a 23-point lead on a top 50 Washington team that's probably better than the record would indicate.
Yeah, I mean, I think in large part this was a pretty special defensive performance from Purdue, especially until if you take out those last 10 minutes. I mean, you talked about it like this was a somewhat sloppy performance from an offense that hasn't really been sloppy recently, and it was somewhat of a higher possession game for Purdue standards, played to 71 possessions as opposed to the usual 66 is what the average is, I believe. But yeah, I mean, this is a Purdue team that really, I think, locked Washington down defensively. It took a lot of shot making down the stretch when the game was already out of hand for Washington to even get to like 54% from 2-point range and 30% from three. In large part, that's just because Purdue frustrated them. I mean, Hannes Steinbach, the Washington lottery pick big that we talked about in the preview, 3-0 at halftime. Like, that's just high-level defensive performances. And for all the questions I think there were surrounding this Purdue interior defense coming into the year, they've done nothing but kind of shut those questions down. I mean, this is now, I believe, the second, or I guess third kind of All-American level big that you're talking about that Purdue's played, and all three have kind of had quiet games. Even Jefferson in the Iowa State loss by 23 that Purdue had, Jefferson didn't exactly have a dominant performance. It was some other factors that contributed to that big loss. So I think that Purdue's front court has really kind of stepped up defensively all year. I mean, they frustrated Toppin quite a bit in Texas Tech, and slowing him down early was a big reason they blitzed Texas Tech in that game. So I think that this Purdue front court's ability to scheme and kind of take from dominant front court players out of games at times has been really important so far.
Yeah, I mean, they really shut down, Steinbach in the first half, and he got his eventually. He's good enough. He's going to do that. He finished with 17 points, but only 4 rebounds. They had 3 steals. Washington got a lot of steals in this game, but I thought Clough did a phenomenal job on Steinbach. There was definitely a building level of physicality throughout the game that sort of culminated in Clough getting some fouls towards the end of the game, trying to get rebounding positioning, including the lowered shoulder that ended up getting called in F1. That was not a popular call in Mackey Arena, but I mean, overall, he did a fantastic job. The help came when it needed to, but Purdue didn't ever felt like they were over helping like they have at points. of the past couple of years and leaving wide open shooters. I thought this is pretty phenomenal. I mean, Washington had 42 points through the first 30 minutes of this game. Throughout the last 10, they scored 31. They really ramped up their defense and their physicality, and then just started launching threes and made some of them. But for 75% of this game, Purdue played a pretty lights out defensive performance, kind of like you and I predicted in the preview, where we said that this felt like a game where Purdue could kind of dictate what they wanted defensively, and that largely, even as Washington was scoring all those points, other than some transition layups and deep post positioning off of turnovers that Steinbach got, Washington was mostly just launching mildly contested threes and hoping they went down, and for a stretch they were.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Claude got going a little bit. He had a couple of shots there down the stretch, got into the paint a little bit and caused some problems for Purdue. It felt like a little bit of just kind of like a lapse in concentration for the last 10 minutes, almost like they were bored. And that's not something you want to see. I think there was a little bit of weird officiating that you mentioned flagrant one, that I think I would really disagree with that being a flagrant one based on how that game was officiated and how Big Ten play is officiated in general. But nonetheless, I think there was just kind of a level of not all the way there. And part of that too is it's a winter break game. Students weren't there. The energy in the building was just, it's not the same. It really isn't the same when students aren't there. And there just wasn't quite the same energy in the building. I can tell you that from being there, there wasn't. And it certainly felt like that down the stretch. And, to a larger point, Washington's also pretty good. Like, that's a pretty talented roster, and they're kind of underperforming, and they haven't won a bunch of games, and yet it falls on deaf ears because they just lost by double digits at IU this last week. But this is a Washington team that has some real talent. Claude's a good player. Steinbach's a good player. Kwamari Peterson is a good player. And, at times they caused problems for Purdue, and it felt like there was just a lapse in concentration. I think it's important to note how dominant this team looked for large parts. Whenever this game was in doubt, this Purdue team is dominant tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Washington has a 8-point win over USC team that's pretty good, or at least was when they played. This was back when they had Rodney Rice still in the lineup. So, their best win outside of that is probably Utah, which I'm sure they'll pick up some better wins as they get into Big Ten play. They get, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Nebraska next. So they might start out with a pretty ugly record in Big Ten play before they have a very soft schedule to close. This could be a team that, starts out 1-6 or 1-7 even. They get Oregon and Illinois after that. But then they just close with all the bottom teams of the Big Ten. And this could easily be a team that finishes 9th or 10th in the league. And we look back at this game at the end of the year and go, hey, Purdue beat a pretty talented Washington team by 8 in a game where they were up by 23, sort of when they took the foot off the gas, or when Washington completely scrapped the game plan and tried the Memphis strategy of just play super physical, muck everything up, and hope you get lucky. And it's worth noting that this is we've seen this a few times now where teams have tried to do this to Purdue. And in past years, even with Edey, with Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer backcourts, that's really bothered Purdue, and they've lost some of those games. I mean, you think back, most famously was the Fairleigh Dickinson game in the tournament, where that was exactly what FDU tried to do, and they did it successfully. But Purdue's had losses all 3 of those seasons where teams have tried to employ this kind of strategy, and Washington didn't do this for the entire game. I think they tried to play an honest game until Kepnang fouled out, who, by the way, I was impressed with in this game, even though he fouled out. I thought he did a good job matching the physicality. He had 10 and 10. He was the only plus rebounder that Washington had in the entire game. Steinbach was second on the team with 4 rebounds. But to what I was saying before, like, this Purdue team has proven they're better than teams who try and do this. They're no longer trying to drag down to the mud. Like I said, in this game, they built a pretty sizable lead. Who knows what the game would have looked like if Washington was doing this from the start. But they haven't let that physicality make them completely fall apart like they had in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you look at it too, like this Purdue front court at the end of the day has the physicality to kind of match that a little bit, and that helps, as we talked about, instead of turning turning that one or 2 point loss in one of those really weird, awkward games that Purdue's had before into an 8 point win. Because at the end of the day, it got super physical, and Purdue's front court responded, and Purdue out rebounded Washington by 12. Like in a game where you got 10 rebounds from Kepning and had a lottery pick big next to him. And Purdue kind of shut down Steinbach, who's been a really, really, really good rebounder this year. And Purdue just kept him off the glass. And a large part of that was Trey Kaufman-Renn, who I think had a really, really awesome game. Had the 6 turnovers. I don't really care all that much, I'm going to be honest. A couple of them were kind of awkward. A couple of them were a little weird. Not sure all 6 were his fault. 14, 14, and 6, though. And he controlled the glass on both ends of the floor, whether it was offensive or defensive. He was the best rebounder on the floor on both ends, and I think you see that with the 7 offensive rebounds, the 7 defensive rebounds. He led the game in both offensive and defensive rebounds. I mean, that's pretty impressive to do, and he had a really awesome game. And I think as good as Braden was, TKR was just as good tonight, in my opinion.
Yeah, Trey was phenomenal. 14 and 14, like you said, 6 assists as well. He finished the first half with, I believe, 10, 5, and 4, and there was a little triple-double watch going on, which Purdue fans know is the kiss of death for any Purdue player trying to get a triple-double. But, it wouldn't shock me if he got one this year, maybe in a game like this one where Braden gets into foul trouble and the ball handling and the playmaking responsibilities are sort of spread around a little bit more. And Washington was forced to play with 2 bigs throughout this game because Purdue often plays with 2 bigs. And, Jack Bennett only played 7 minutes in this game. I don't even checked in the second half, at least not for more than a minute or 2, because Trey was just so physically dominant on both ends of the floor that Banner didn't want to take him out of the game.
Yeah, Benner ended up with 8 minutes. He hit his only shot from the floor, a 2-point attempt, and had a couple of rebounds. So not a terrible 8 minutes for Benter. But I think that was a good segue. You mentioned the Braden Smith foul trouble. Despite the 3 fouls in the first half, I think that was the only kind of negative. I guess that and the 6 turnovers, the only negatives to his game tonight. He was pretty awesome. 23 points, 7 assists. Ken Palm MVP. Added in a rebound, 3 steals. I thought was doing a lot of good things defensively. He's just the best point guard in the country. And, this is a good reminder that even though on a night where we're celebrating him for being the special passer he is and setting the all-time Big Ten assist record the game before, he can score with the best of them too. I mean, he really had the midi going. It's such an unstoppable shot when he's hitting it. I mean, it's because the one shot that most teams are just happy to let teams take is tough off the dribble 2s. And when Braden's going, he hits that shot at like a 70% clip. It's ridiculous. And the level of difficulty on some of these shots, I don't think people quite realize because he makes it look so easy. But seeing him hit a fader from 16 feet over a 7-footer is just – that's a really, really tough shot, and he's hitting them at a pretty high clip at the moment.
Yeah, Braden was phenomenal scoring in this game. 10 for 15 from the floor. He had 23 points on 15 shots. It's pretty special. Only 2 free throws as well, or 3 free throws as well. It wasn't like he was 7 for 8 at the line or anything like that and shooting 50%. He was a 66% from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3. 6 turnovers. Some of them were a little bit fluky. Some of them he just got sloppy with some of his passes, like I mentioned earlier. But didn't have the assist numbers I'm sure he wanted, as he's trying to chase Bobby Hurley's all-time assist record. But he'll have plenty more opportunities to rack up some double-digit assist nights. 3 steals. He was all over the floor defensively as well, which got him in trouble a little bit early. Picked up some cheap fouls early in the second half, and then had a bad turnover and made a dumb play trying to dive and recover it on a fast break that ended up getting them 3 and put him in Painter's doghouse. He sounded pretty pissed at the halftime report from the Big Ten Network's Andy Katz. Was basically saying he just told Brady he wouldn't be starting the second half, and then he better be nice to Omer in the locker room. Outside of that, yeah, like you said, 23 points from Braden, lapping the field. I mean, the next highest scorer was Steinbach with 17 in this game. Down the stretch when Washington started to close the gap a little bit, he needed a couple scores late. He just got downhill, got to his mid-range, and scored to make sure that there would be no upset watches in Mackey Arena on our Wednesday night. He really took control of this game throughout whenever he was on the floor, which, as Pander said, was probably not as much as either of them would have liked.
Yeah, he was special. So was Trey Kaufman. Tonight was really a night that, kind of a culmination of Purdue a little bit, where it's been all the role players almost all year, and now finally we get to Big Ten play, and tonight was really a night where we saw the stars shine and saw the two All-American level players that Purdue has, kind of play like All-American level players, and we haven't seen that quite as much as we thought we would this year, I think, just because the team has been so good and the role guys have been so good, and especially like a guy like Clough stepping in and just being as good as he is and as deserving as much playing time and as much opportunity as he's been deserving of. I mean, there's only one basketball. There's only 40 minutes of game time. You can't extend the game to get guys a few extra shots. You can't play with two balls to get guys a few extra shots. It just kind of, there's a finite amount. And I think it speaks to the sacrifice that those guys have made this year. But tonight was really a night about the two stars. The third guy I thought, though, that really impressed me, we haven't talked about him at all yet, CJ Cox. I thought this was a really, really strong CJ Cox game, and another kind of data point for my opinion of, I think CJ just needs 30 minutes. Like, just give him 30 minutes. He's a starter. Play him like a starter. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the country. I think we've talked about it a lot, and I still don't think he's getting the love nationally that it deserves as a defender. I mean, people are not talking about him the way that they talk about some other defenders, and I think he deserves it at this point. And thought he was awesome. I mentioned Claude got going a little bit there in the second half. A little bit got going a little bit is even a stretch. I mean, he had 9 points, 2 for 5 from 2-point range. He hit the 1-3 to start the scoring for Washington, and then was pretty quiet after that. I think in large part because CJ Cox was there, and to combine that with I thought one of CJ's better offensive games. There were a couple of like ISO moments where CJ kind of got to his spot and did him a little bit. He had the awesome wraparound pass. Forget who was on the receiving end of it, but that was a pass I hadn't really seen CJ make before. Thought this was a great CJ Cox game. What did you see from him today?
He was fantastic. That pass you mentioned was to Clough, and it led to a dunk. I mean, this was, I believe it was a dunk. It was at least a layup. CJ was awesome. He played 28 minutes in this game, and yeah, I'm with you. He's a 30-minute. He should be a 30-minute per game guy. As good as Purdue's bench is, I mean, there's clearly 5 players that stand above the rest. The 5 starters are the 5 best players in this team, and in a game like this where Braden was in foul trouble, Fletcher couldn't hit a shot, CJ just got more run. I mean, Jakari played 18 minutes in this game. It's not like they forced him out of the rotation. Meyer played 16. His minutes just sort of came at the expense of Braden's and Fletcher's a little bit, and he is proving every week that he is deserving of more minutes and more responsibility. And his ability to step up, he had 3 assists in this game. Omer Meyer had 1. Like, his ability to be a secondary ball handler when Ober's struggling and when Braden's in foul trouble is really important. It was a role that he was supposed to play last year that he was, not great at as a freshman. He was adequate at times. Most part, whenever he had the ball in his hands, he was just hunting his own shot, and he wasn't really running any offense. And as evidenced by that wraparound pass, like, there's at least a little bit there where, if Ober's not ready, if Braden can't be on the floor, maybe they give CJ the keys to the offense a little bit. But like you said, he makes his money, quote unquote, on defense. And this is just another example. I mean, he was on Claude for much of the game. He was on Zoom Diallo for other parts of the game. Claude had 9 points. Zoom Diallo had 5 turnovers. I mean, this was just clinic and you can just watch the tape. Like, it really doesn't matter who he's on. He is so good at getting over screens now and going under on the right guys, just getting to his spots and making sure that he's in position to make plays defensively. He doesn't foul. He had 1 foul in this game. He's turning into a really, really plus defender on the perimeter.
Yeah, I think part of the reason he doesn't quite get the love he deserves as a defender is he's just not like the havoc-inducing type. He's not a big stocks guy. but it's almost like a Houdini effect. I mean, you put CJ Cox in the game and you say we're just going to take away your best guard. You're not going to get anything. He's not going to be open the entire game, and it's a unique ability to just stay attached. You can't shake him. He fights over screens, as you said. He's one of the best in the country at navigating screens, whether it's a ball screen and off ball screen. He doesn't get beat off the dribble. He's quick and he's stocky enough. He's built enough to be physical. He's only 6'3", but he plays a little bigger in 6'3" because he's got some weight to him. He's got some strength to him, and he's not afraid to be physical with guys. And it's just he makes every single shot attempt your star guard takes really tough. And that's a tough way to live, especially at the collegiate level when the shot making just isn't quite the same as the pro level.
If he's listed at almost 200 pounds, like that's huge.
He looks it. I mean,
that's huge for a guard like him. He's built like a running back almost, like a tall, like Ollie Gordon with the Dolphins. That was like 6'3", 210. Like it's a little bit like what CJ is, and it shows that like guys just can't go through him, and he's quick enough to keep guys in front of him off the dribble. He's exactly the defender we haven't had since Lance Jones, and I know we had CJ last year, but he's really taken a leap this year, and it's really cool to see. We haven't mentioned.
Sorry, I think it's to the point where at this point, as a Purdue fan, I go into games thinking your best guard's not really going to get much. Like we can essentially take your best guard out of the game. I feel confident at just about anybody under about 6'6". I mean, you start to get into the big oversized wings like the Milan Momcilovic's, and they can kind of take advantage of him being 6'3". But you talk about one or two guards. There's very few guys in the country, I think, that are going to really get a lot of points off of CJ Cox. And I think you saw him take away Christian Anderson. You saw him take away LeBaron Philon. There's maybe one or two guys in the country better than those two at the moment. One of them plays on Purdue, but outside of Braden Smith, I mean, there's very few guys that are better than those two, and he's just been able to completely take guys out of the game.
Yeah, he was fantastic in this game, and he has been all season. I mean, in college basketball, especially, like all defensive team is very much reputation based. So let's start the CJ Cox for all defensive team bandwagon. Let's get the media train rolling. Let's
screw all defensive team. Defensive player of the year. Come on.
He's not going to have the stocks to win defensive player of the year. I don't know who that'll go to in the Big Ten. Probably someone on Michigan. It's going to be Ademar most likely. But and saying that, it should be Ademar. Like Mara's been phenomenal for that Michigan defense, which is rating out as one of the best defenses in the history of college basketball. But let's get CJ on the all defensive team. It'll be CJ and 4 Michigan players. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Maybe throw DJ in there. You can at least shout
Nation's leader in block rate.
Nation's leader in block rate, the best rim protector in the country right now. That's Daniel Jacobson. So regardless, we'll kind of move on from the CJ Cox train because we've given him a lot of love, much deserved though. But we are a little bit limited on time here. I think it's fair to get into a little bit of Omer Meyer discussion. This is a polarizing player, I think, among Purdue figures. A lot of people love him. I think there's a few people who are not quite sold on his game yet, but thought this was a good Omer Meyer game. 8 points. He was 3 for 4 from the field, 2 for 2 from 3. Only had the 1 assist to 1 turnover, but I think in the role that he played tonight, I think that's kind of what you wanted from him. And I thought, played his role well. And, he's 4 for his last 7 from 3. I think the jumper is starting to come. And if that does, Purdue's going to start to find themselves a special player on the bench that might eat into some, maybe some Jakari Harris minutes or something like that.
Meyer was a guy I was really high on coming into the year, and I've cooled significantly on him for this year. I think it's fair to question what his role is on this team this year and next year, which is not something I would have said coming into the year. And even after this game, I'm kind of left with the same questions. Like, he was given the keys to the offense. He went 3 for 4 from the floor, 2 for 2 from 3. He had a rebound, an assist, and a turnover. There was a foul in this game. I would have liked to see more playmaking from him, and that's really a role that CJ and the bigs took when Omer was on the floor. And to be fair, I mean, Braden only had 4 assists in the first half, I think. So it's not like he was dicing up the defense and then Meyer couldn't do anything. Washington's defense was kind of forcing other guys to get the assists and to make plays. But even still, I mean, this is just an example. He has more turnovers than assists on the season. And right now, Purdue wants him to be Braden's backup pretty much exclusively. They do play together for like 3 to 4 minute stretches every game. But for the most part, he's going to get 12 minutes. 6 of those are going to come with Braden on the bench. The other 6 will come with him on the floor. And then they want him to be a secondary playmaker when he's on the floor with Braden and often run the offense, right? It's pretty well known at this point that Braden is a much better off-ball shooter than on-ball shooter from three, right? And you can just see that. Like, if he gets catch and shoot opportunities, they're almost always going in. And off the dribble, it's very dicey. A little bit the opposite with his mid-range. The hope was coming into the year that Meyer would provide more of those opportunities for Braden. They could give him the ball when they're on the floor together, get Braden off ball, and then let Meyer on the show with 2 of the best finishing bigs in the country and 2 of the best off-ball shooters in the country next to him with Braden and Fletch. That hasn't really materialized. I don't think he's a good enough playmaker right now to do that. Some of the passes he makes look every bit as impressive as some of Braden's passes. But on a play-to-play, game-to-game basis, he's turning the ball over more than he's making assists right now. And if he's doing that, then it's, okay, what's his scoring like? And this game was great. He had 8 points in 16 minutes, 8 points and 4 shots. It's hyper efficient. But he's like a 30% three-point shooter on the season. And when he doesn't have the ball, like, he's a little bit the opposite of Braden. He's a much better pull-up off the dribble shooter than he is catch-and-shoot guy. It just muddies the waters as to what his role is going to be on this team moving forward. And like I said, this game just continued that for me, because if he's not going to be a big assist guy and it's all in the scoring, then essentially you have a hyper inefficient shot chucking backup point guard that doesn't really vibe with the rest of Purdue's offense.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit more belief in the scoring going forward. I think this is a good player who, I think it's a good shooter who hasn't been shooting well. I think it's a freshman adjusting to a very different style of basketball. I mean, you see, I think it was like at halftime when Omer hit the really tough baseline shot, and it almost kind of felt like he just said, "Screw the play, I'm just going to go get one." And I think you saw Paint again go run the effing play, and I think that's been something that Omer has not always done at Purdue is kind of run the robotic sets that Purdue runs at times. However, I think at this point you say pretty comfortably, like, I wouldn't want to play Omer without TKR on the floor. I think that's a something rotationally that I personally feel. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn should be on the floor when Omer Mayer is, because I think that they fit together the best. I think that's the best fit. And, you let a good point forward kind of take over playmaking duties to an extent. And then especially if you pair Omer with TKR and then either CJ or Braden, I think at this point CJ is enough of a secondary playmaker, and Braden's such a good playmaker obviously by himself, that if you have one of those 2 guys on the floor and Trey Kaufman-Renn, it takes off the playmaking responsibilities for Omer and allows him to just kind of be this explosive off the bench scorer. And if the jumper starts going down a little bit, which I think it will, I think it has in the past, and I think it should start falling down. I think this is a guy due for some positive shooting regression. All of a sudden you have this explosive microwave guy off the bench that could become a really, really important piece come March, just from a explosivity standpoint. I mean, we've seen it in the past, teams in March that have a guy like that off the bench that can just go get you 20, can save you at times from an upset that you might have otherwise had when your original plan wasn't working. So I think having a guy like that is important. And, in the ever shifting role, I think I have some belief in Omer going forward, especially with positive shooting regression.
It's possible. I just question, like I said, I think he's a much better off dribble shooter than catch and shoot guy. And I just don't know how often Purdue's going to give him the keys to the offense and say, go get your shot. Like, even in this game, like, he had the buzzer beater at the half. That was not the play Painter drew up in the huddle. It was for Ober to dribble around for 15 seconds and take a tough contested fadeaway baseline shot that even Braden Smith is largely taken out of his game this year. I I think there's a role for Meyer yet, and like you said, I think there's going to be a game, maybe a game like this where they need more from Meyer shooting wise. Like Braden gets in foul trouble and Trey isn't hitting everything inside the paint, and maybe they just say, "All right, Omer, just go start taking some shots," and that could definitely happen. I'm sure it will. Big Ten. There's 16 games left in the Big Ten schedule. I'm sure he'll have like a 20-point game at some point, but when we talk about what this rotation is going to look like in March, what this rotation is going to look like in the biggest games of the year, like against an Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan, whoever, like that's where I start to question. Like if we're saying CJ Cox deserves 30 minutes, there's just not that many to go around for bench guards at that point. And in theory, I mean, Jakari is probably a better catch and shoot guy than Meyer, much as his shot has also been a bit of a question mark this season. And he's a much better defender. So that's where it starts to go, and Painter even said, I think on the broadcast last night, like Meyer's been put in a tough spot with limited minutes in a very specific role they're asking him to play. So I'm not concerned about Meyer next year so much as like on this team right now, like what in an ideal world, unless his like off the like catch and shoot numbers start going up, it might be tough to play him alongside our main lineups.
Yeah, I think I'm buying the catch and shoot numbers and just the shooting numbers in general going up. I mean, you mentioned inefficiency. He's been inefficient to start, but honestly, he's up to 53% from 2-point range, 31% from three, and it felt like he wasn't able to buy a shot for about a month. And I think he's due for some positive regression. I think you're already starting to see it a little bit. I just buy him being a better shooter than he's been. And I think in large part, this is a guy who, I mean, as you mentioned, was brought over and is playing a very specific role, one that he has never before played. He's never really been that off-ball guy. Even when he was playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv and not playing a ton of minutes in the EuroLeague, he was still like the on-ball shot-hunting guard when he was in the game. And I mean, when he played for Team Israel in the like the U19 and the U20 World Cup, it was just there wasn't anybody on Israel capable of taking shots away from him. And I think it led to just some very loud Omer performances because obviously he's a shot hunting guard that's going to get a play for 35 or 40 minutes and go hunt his own shot, and that leads to him scoring a lot. He's getting used to playing in a new system and a very new style of basketball he's never played before. And also I think part of it is too, we haven't really talked about, he's an 18-year-old kid on the other side of the world from where he's used to. I mean, I don't know a ton about his early childhood, but I would imagine that as someone who was born and raised in Israel, he was not exactly frequenting the U.S. and doesn't exactly have a ton of family over here, a ton of familiarity over here. So I think getting used to it will really help him. And I mean, you mentioned the five guys. I think going forward, like rotationally, when you play those high-level games against like a Michigan or a Michigan State or an Illinois, largely there just aren't going to be that many backup minutes because the starting five's so good. And I think I'm okay with that. Like, I think I'm okay with just playing Braden 36 minutes in those games and saying, you know what, Omer, there may only be 6 minutes here. Like that's part of coming off the bench and playing behind an All-American point guard.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. I think, he's been put in a tough spot this year, like I said, like Painter said. We'll see if his shooting numbers go up, he's going to be a super valuable part of this team. And if they don't, he probably gets phased out of the rotation a little bit more as come down the stretch. And I think either way, it'll kind of take care of itself. I think that's really true of like all these rotation questions. Like Purdue has 9 guys they feel really, really good about being part of their rotation. And usually when you get to March, you're only playing like 7 or 8 major minutes. So this might be a situation a little bit like, in March 2 years ago when Edey took the team to the Final Four. Miles Goldwyn had been playing a decent bench role throughout Big Ten play and barely played in the tournament. Like we could see a similar thing there, or Benter or Meyer or Jakari just don't see a ton of minutes in those big games, but that doesn't mean that Painter isn't confident that they can come in and play a role if they need to, whether it's due to foul trouble or injury or matchup or whatever it might be. Like he has 9 guys he feels very confident can come in and make a big impact.
Yeah, I think that's valuable, and it won't play out and all 9 guys seeing meaningful playing time every game, but it's always nice to have some backup plans. And going forward, I think the future is very bright for Elmer Meyer. But did you have any more thoughts on this Washington game? I know this is kind of a short recap for our standards, but it feels like there was Purdue didn't go super deep into the bench, and you saw some limited minutes from guys like Jakari Harris, Jack Benner, even Jacobson and Elmer Meyer. I guess we can do the Jacobson thing. I thought he was pretty awesome. We haven't really gotten to him yet.
Really the only player I haven't talked about yet. I thought Jacobson was good. 10 points, 6 shots. I think like 4 of them were just lob dunks. He's such a insane lob threat. The way he's just quick and he gets to the basket easily, and then he's taller than everyone else. And like I said, he has good touch around the rim. I've been impressed with that this season. So he kind of got played off the floor in this game. This was just a level of physicality I don't think he's really ready for. He only had 1 rebound in his 13 minutes. That's probably why they played Clough. Also, I'm sure the way that the game was going in the second half, Painter thought he might break both legs if he put him back out there. So that's just, in the Big Ten, this is kind of always the concern with Jacobson, especially last year, but even this year, like there's just a level of physicality that he's just not ready for. Like he struggled with some of the physicality against some of the bye game opponents we had in the non-con. There's no way he's ready to go up against Kep Nang and Steinbach under the basket. So 13 minutes was probably all to be expected, but he still had 2 blocks and 10 points in that time. So really can't complain about one of the better backup centers in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes – I think he's a year away. It just makes you really excited for the future with Jacobson. You mentioned he's such a good lob threat. His timing is so exceptional. He gets off the floor so well for being 7'4", and, he's not the quickest laterally or moving on the perimeter, but getting up and down vertically, he's really good at that. And I think that's part of what makes him such a good shot blocker and part of what makes him such a good lob threat. But, yeah, I thought – he did what he needed to. In his 13 minutes, he played well and kind of played his role and blocked a couple shots. And that's what you kind of hope out of Daniel Jacobson in a world where you get to start Oscar Clough at your center. So I think, that kind of about does it. Honestly, it was a pretty I don't want to say unremarkable when you're up 25 in a Big Ten game, but it was a well played but sloppy game, I think, and they didn't go super deep into the bench, so there's not a ton of guys to talk about. So, but yeah, other than that, thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back with a preview for Penn State on Saturday. The video will be coming out probably shortly after this one. So, thanks for listening, everyone.